The purpose of this shiur, um, I have a specific goal. I'm gonna say it straight out forward. Um, there's no, I'm not trying to hide anything. Some people like to give a shiur and build up the drama and keep some secrets in the background and then reveal them at the end. So I think there is a lot to learn from this year. Don't worry, but I'm just gonna say straight out forward. What I'm trying to first of all achieve is create a connection between two very known things that we have in Shavuot, which I think are pretty known in terms of everyone talks about this. It's very clear that we have this tension. And then I'll try to explain a bit more the way we're going to do it which I think not a lot of teachings have been taught around this. So the obvious thing that I'm talking about is the tension between Chag Shavuot being Chag Matan Torah. What we say on Shavuot, we say in Ya'aleh V'Yavo, we say it in Musaf. When we refer to Shavuot, we refer to it as Zman Matan Torateinu, the time of the giving of our Torah. And on the other hand, in the Torah, it never says explicitly that Shavuot is the time when we receive the Torah. To be more exact, Shavuot is really, first of all, it's called Shavuot. Shavuot in free translation would mean weeks. And it's the weeks that we count from the Korban of the Omer until the 50th day, in which we bring a special offering, which is connected to the agricultural season, which is the time when we start harvesting the wheat. And as we know, that's the Yemek Sir Chitim, the days where we harvest the wheat. So that's a very known tension. And usually people just choose what to focus on. Either we focus on the agricultural aspect of Shavuot, or that we focus on Shavuot as the time of the giving of the Torah. And usually there is no real connection between the two. Now, a lot of times what people do, and I think I've done this for many years, we tend to explain in a very vague, general way, what is the connection between the Sphira of the days of the Omer to Shavuot. Shavuot is the day in which we receive the Torah. And in order to receive the Torah, we need to anticipate. We need to count towards it. We need to maybe even work, do something in order to receive the Torah. And the known source for that, I think if anyone has a better source than what I'm going to mention now, you're welcome to mention it. But really, in the Torah, where we find where we find in our sources this idea is a lot of kids already from elementary school know to say that in Mitzrayim, in the days of exile, we were in Egypt, and we were in 49 gates of Tuma, and after 49 days, we counted. We went out of each and every gate of Tuma, and we went into another level and another level of purity, from impurity to purity, until we can receive the Torah. This is a very known idea, but really the first time where it's mentioned is in the book of the Zohar. So that's like not usually common knowledge and something that becomes the most known thing. And it's very interesting that became like the archetype for a lot of people, where how we illustrate Shavuot is the holiday of receiving the Torah, and the process leading to it is just because we have 49 days, and very vaguely we understand that there is some kind of connection counting towards purity for receiving the Torah. So what I want to do now is to try and look into the halachic sources that we find in the Torah, and really try to go in deeper and to understand even more that there are much deeper connections that can illustrate and describe and explain to us the connection between the giving of the Torah, the receiving of the Torah, and the agricultural aspect and the not a countdown, count up, that we have been doing in the past almost 7 weeks now, 6.5 weeks, towards Matan Torah. So, the first source I want to kind of look at is in the Torah. Hashem speaks to Moshe and commands us on all the Chagim, and when we get to Shavuot, so we are told as follows, that the first in Hebrew, I will not read now. Speak to the Israelites, and starting from the second line in the English, Israelite people, and say to them, when you enter the land that I am giving to you, and you reap its harvest, you shall bring the first sheaf of your harvest to the priest. He shall elevate the sheaf from before Hashem for acceptance in your behalf. The priest shall elevate it on the day after the Sabbath. Okay, so basically what we see here is that there is this offering that we need to bring in and it's the beginning of everything. The beginning of everything in the agricultural year. And that's what we call the Korban of the Omer. And the priest, the Kohen, needs to elevate it, and in that sense, it's like a bracha, like a shehecheyanu that we give in the beginning of the agricultural year. And then we are supposed to be counting. We count 49 days till we get to the 50th day. And on the 50th day, if we skip down, I'm not going to read everything now, we will see that on the 50th day, then you shall bring, I don't know if you can see this on your screen. Oh, oops. On the 50th day, we bring a different offering, which is already the day of Shavuot. I'm not reading that now, but basically bringing another additional offering that is not, and as traditionally we know, isn't from barley, like the first offering, the Korban of the Omer. This is from wheat. So that's the first thing that we learn, and we already have this interesting distinction that we can think about from barley to wheat. And in addition to that, we are commanded to count. So from the beginning of the agricultural year throughout the whole process to the 50th day, in which we bring already fully formed bread from wheat that was processed, it went through a whole process, and now we have this final product. So in that sense, these 7 weeks, I'm stopping the share for a second. These 7 weeks are counting from the beginning of the process in which we bring one offering, the Korban of the Omer, which we know from halachically is from barley, and then we count down all the way to Shavuot, in which we bring bread. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, in addition to that, if we're gonna go back to the share screen, and we'll see that halachically we're gonna use the Rambam's Sefer HaMitzvot, not Sefer HaMitzvot, I mean the Mishnah Torah, to see how halacha really approaches the details of these offerings. So we already mentioned the things that are here in halacha Gimel. In halacha Daled, we see already the Rambam is emphasizing something, and he says as follows: that there is a fixed time when this offering is brought. Hence, the prohibitions against forbidden labor on the Shabbat and the restrictions of ritual impurity. So what's important for us is that even on Shabbat, we're supposed to bring this offering, the offering of the Omer, which is in the beginning of the process. Okay, and this, and also in the next, and if you skip 2 halachas down, the last lines here in front of you, it is a mitzvah that it be reaped at night, on the night of the 16th of Nisan. This applies whether that day falls during the week or on the Shabbat. Okay, so again, we can see that the Rambam emphasizes that it's supposed to be on Shabbat. And again, we can see this very interesting description that tells us when it became dark, the reapers would ask those standing, has the sun set yet? They would answer yes. Has the sun set yet? They would answer yes. Everything they would do would be repeated 3 times. And then towards the end, we can see that again, comes up another important question. If it was Shabbat, if this is a long line after all this repeated text, if it was the Sabbath, they would ask, is it Shabbat? They would answer yes, and then repeat that question and answering 3 times. Afterwards, they would ask, should I reap? And they would answer yes, and same thing 3 times. Okay, so we can see that they need to like ask for permission or let everyone know that it is Shabbat, and the person who's supposed to reap the minchata omer, the offering, he needs to ask again and again, and they need to say yes. You need to reap it even on Shabbat. So there's a few different explanations why this is so important. We know historically this was a very big dispute during the time of the second Beit HaMikdash regarding the question: could we do the work of this korban, of this offering on Shabbat? And the rabbis, the halachic rabbis, we can say, were very, very harsh about it, that we are supposed to do it. And there were the different groups that the Karaites, we call them Karaites, or the Sdokim, the Baitosim, the different groups at the time of the Beit HaMikdash that were very opposed. And we can see here how halachically we emphasize that we do it on Shabbat. One of the teachings that we find for this is a very interesting teaching by Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, and he says that just like we learn, I'm gonna stop the sharing. Since it says in the Torah, Usfartem lachem, we say this every night before we count the Omer, we say Usfartem lachem, and we learn from that, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira teaches us that because it is lachem, because this counting is for us, therefore it can even overcome Shabbat that isn't in our hands. Meaning this is a very radical idea, but basically it's saying that the Torah says that we have to do the Omer. And on the other hand, it's saying that it could happen on Shabbat. Since it could take place and happen on Shabbat, the Torah, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira says, inevitably what the Torah is trying to teach us, that it has to be the day that it falls on, no matter what, even if it is on Shabbat. And therefore, there's something very interesting here and counterintuitive. Because the counting of the Omer is us, it's according to our calendar, and we know that Am Yisrael have the power to sanctify the time to do Kiddush HaChodesh. And therefore, Chazal are saying it can even overcome Shabbat. Okay, and that's something that's very interesting and counterintuitive. But on the other hand, we're gonna find later on when the Rambam in the next chapter describes the bringing of the offering of the Shtei Halechem, which are brought on Shavuot, he says these offerings are never done on Shabbat. You need to prepare the bread and bake it and do the whole process before Shabbat. So that's something kind of surprising. because Chag Shavuot, we would expect that the offering will overcome Shabbat, just like the beginning of the process overcame Shabbat. But we find that the end of the process actually does not overcome Shabbat, and there's a mitzvah to prepare it all in advance and to bake it all in advance, and then the bread, the shtei alechem that are brought on Shavuot can be brought properly and not on Shabbat. So that's already another. If I'll just sum up a bit of what we saw till now, we saw something very interesting. That first of all, there's a mitzvah. This mitzvah contains within it two ends. You can count it as a few different mitzvot, but I'm just saying, like, it's given to us as one whole idea in which we start counting the Omer when we bring the offering to the Omer. That offering is barley, which is less, it's in the language of Chazal, it's called ma'achal be'ema. It's the food that you give your animals. You give it's not really, barley isn't really as high quality as wheat. So that's the first thing, from barley to wheat. Then we also see that the process starts out with something that we are obligated to do it even on Shabbat if it falls on Shabbat. And on the other hand, at the end of the process, we're supposed to prepare before Shabbat, and we cannot, and it does not overcome Shabbat. So that's two things that we can mention in terms of the beginning and the end of this process. Does anyone have any comments, any thoughts until now? Okay, so I think that's a bit of like an introduction. I think those are things that are pretty known, but it's very important to just illustrate the whole process here that we have. As I said, a beginning, the counting, and the end. Now, what happens? And really feel welcome to add if you have any thoughts on this. But who cares if you bring the Omer or not? Or let's put it this way: if you didn't bring the sacrifice of the Omer, what happens? Does it make any difference? What did we achieve by bringing this? We just checked the box. Okay, we did a mitzvah. But what is the essence and the purpose of this mitzvah? So there is something interesting to think about. I've mentioned this already shortly, but in a sense, 1 second, I'm sharing the screen with you again. So not many interpretations were brought to this question, but if you look at the halacha again in the Rambam, you can see in the same chapter that I already mentioned, the Rambam says, we already explained that the meal offering for the additional offerings and first fruits may not be brought from new grain before the bringing of the Omer. If one brought them, the offering is invalid. Similarly, these offerings should not be brought before bringing the 2 loaves on Shavuot, but if one brought them, the offering is acceptable. Okay, so I think from this halacha, and I'll explain it in a second, but I think it does give a bit more clarity what we have here. So the Rambam says, if you bring any mincha, any meal offering, or bikurim from the chadash, from the new grains from the harvest of this year, before the Omer was brought, so it's invalid. It's pasul. Similarly, you're not allowed to bring it before the bringing of the shtei alechem, the 2 loaves on Shavuot. But if you brought them before shtei alechem, the offering is still acceptable. Okay, and then the Rambam adds another interesting idea. So before I go to the next halacha in the Rambam, I'll just say that what we learned from here already is something that's familiar, especially for people who grew up in the U.S. There's the Isser of Chadash, right? Chadash meaning you're not allowed to eat from the grains that grew in this new year before the 16th of Nisan, because today we don't bring the korban of the Omer, but basically there still is this Isser. So the same thing applies also in the Mikdash. we're not allowed to bring offerings. Not only that we're not allowed to eat it by ourselves, also we're not allowed to bring to Hashem anything new before we bring these. We bring the offering of the Omer. What this teaches us is that, in a sense, the Omer is have to be from the beginning of the agricultural year. It's like a bracha. It's like sort of a sheheyanu. It's sort of like a bracha for all the things that are growing throughout all of the land. Now think about it. In a sense, before we eat anything in our times, right, we make a bracha. But what the Kohen does in the Beit HaMikdash, he's basically making a bracha for all of Am Yisrael together. So that's basically the idea here. And then the Rambam adds another interesting idea here, and he says that anyone who offers a meal offering from new grain should recite the blessing Shecheyanu. Okay, so this means that if a Kohen does actually bring an offering when he wasn't supposed to, he still needs to make a Shecheyanu. Why? Because in a sense, this is like a replacement of the Shecheyanu of the korban of the 2 loaves, right? Whenever you bring something new, you make a shecheyanu. And the Rambam put this in together, teaching us basically that intrinsically they are the same idea. So really what we have here is an offering that is supposed to renew the whole agricultural system, and it takes place in the Mikdash for all of Am Yisrael together. Perfect. Okay, so that basically illustrates what this offering is. That could sound a bit boring to some people who are not familiar with the work in the Mikdash and the spiritual language that we have on the national level, as with offerings and korbanot and so on. But if we try to take a step back and ask, what about our time? Do we have any of these mitzvot? So the answer would be, yes, we do. We count the Omer. Okay, but if the counting of the Omer and the whole process is only for the offering and for bring the offerings linked to the agricultural year, we would expect the counting of the Omer not to be something that we're obligated to from the Torah. But what we can find here, for example, in the Rambam, that we're going with his halachot and his instruction is very clear here. There's a mitzvah. You see here in Halacha Kaf Daled, the mitzvah is for each and every person in Am Yisrael at any time, regardless of the mikdash. So basically, there is this mitzvah of counting the Omer, even if it's totally disconnected from the agricultural element. We're still obligated to count. And that can already, I think, bring up the question, if this mitzvah of counting stands for itself, regardless of the agricultural process, so there might be something additional here, okay? And that, I think, already takes us one more step to the understanding that if we learned that the whole idea that the counting of the Omer and the bringing of the Omer is linked to the phrase lachem, usfartem lachem. We need to count for ourselves. Not only that, we learn in the Gemara that because it's for us, it overcomes Shabbat, which is something very extreme and radical. So we have a mitzvah that overcomes Shabbat. Just to remind ourselves, like on Rosh Hashanah, if it comes out on Shabbat, we don't blow the shofar, right? If Sukkot comes out, the first day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbat, do we shake the lulav? Right? The shaking of the lulav doesn't overcome Shabbat. But here we have a mitzvah that does overcome Shabbat, in a sense. So we definitely can, the lulav and the shofar might not be good examples because in the time of the mikdash they did, but I'm just giving that as examples how extreme this idea. So we see that everything is linked to our counting. We're counting for ourselves. In addition to that, we see that even when there is no agricultural aspect, we count for ourselves, by ourselves, each and every day, each and every night, to be exact. So we have this we have this tension, and I think that already starts to direct us to zoom out of the agricultural aspect and ask towards what are we counting for if we're not counting from the bringing of the Omer, and we're not counting to the bringing of the 2 loaves on Shavuot. So seemingly we are counting for something, and we are counting for ourselves. And I want to add to that question another question, and then maybe we can, or another 2 questions, and then maybe we can start answering and tying it together. So there is, I'm skipping these sources now, this we mentioned. So there is a question, what happens if you count, not what happens, since the Torah says on the one hand, we need to count 7 full weeks, 49 days. And then, tisperu 50 yom. So the Torah says on the one hand, we need to count 49 days, and on the other hand, it says 50 days. Anyone have a solution for this question? Do we need to count 49, and do we need to count 50? How many do we count nowadays? We count 49. We make a bracha 49 days. The 50th day we don't count. So there is some kind of tension here, and a lot of the commentaries gave explanations to this. Rav Soloveitchik in the book Hararei Kedem, you can find that he deals with this question, and there are a few different answers. Rashi basically says that we're not obligated to count the 50th day. We count 49, and the 50th is when we arrive there after we counted 49. The Rosh says that the how do you say, the Torah just rounded it up, 49. So the Torah said 50 days. That's the explanation of the Rosh, which is, it could be a bit difficult. But there are 2 interesting answers that were given in Volozhin by the Netziv in his Perush HaMek Davar, and by his father-in-law of Rav Itchel of Volozhin. They're both here in front of you. The first explanation, I'll go to the last source here on this page. Rav Itchel of Volozhin, in his book Pekadosh, Holy Mouth, says that Usfatem Lachem is really for all of Am Yisrael. But that's the 49 days. But then when it says Tisperu, it's not referring anymore to Am Yisrael, it's referring to the Beis Din. The Beis Din meaning the authority, the representation of the authority of Torah, and really it's not every one of us as individuals, rather there's already a different element here. The 50th day isn't only in our personal hands, in our personal process, rather it's a mitzvah for us as a whole, for the nation as a whole. Similarly, but very differently, the Netziv, in his interpretation, and his commentary to the Torah, says that it's in bold here in this second source in this page here, and it does not have English either, but I'm going to translate it. He says that the 50th day doesn't have the mitzvah of counting out loud and expressing it by mouth. Rather, it's a counting in the heart. Okay, so again, there's 49 days of one quality of counting, and the 50th is a different quality of counting, which is internal. Okay, so we have one explanation that it's something as for the whole nation as a whole. The other explanation refers to counting in the heart, something very internal. Both of them are basically, I think, the common denominator of both interpretations is that they're saying that there is a totally different quality that is much beyond the external regular counting that we're doing during the 49 days. So those are two explanations, and I want to tie that together with one more interesting question that we find in the Gemara. And I'll just bring it again from the Rambam, because really the Rambam sums up a lot of the discussion that we have. The Rambam says, if wheat kernels descended from the cloud, right? Suddenly we have wheat coming down from the heaven. What do? There is an unsolved doubt in the Talmud whether they are considered as coming from your dwelling places. Hence, as an initial preference, the 2 loaves should not be brought from such a grain. After the fact, the offering is acceptable. Meaning, there's a lechatchila and a diavad here. Technically, since there's a doubt and it was unsolved in the Talmud, you're not supposed to bring an offering from wheat that comes down from the heavens. Okay, but if it does, it is acceptable. So this question, right, the Rambam at least explains, and also the Talmud explains, what's the question here? There's a mitzvah to bring the loaves offering from ourselves and from our land, from the Eretz Yisrael, only from Eretz Yisrael. And then there's a question, and not from any wheat that grew in any other land. If it grew out of Eretz Yisrael, it's not acceptable. So that's the doubt. When it comes down from the heavens into Eretz Yisrael, is it considered as something that's not from Chutz La'aretz? Or is it considered as something that's not from Eretz Yisrael? Does it need to grow in Eretz Yisrael, or does it need to only not be from Chutz La'aretz? That's the question, that's the doubt. Since it was unsolved, the Rambam says you're not supposed to bring from it. But if you did bring, it is acceptable because it wasn't solved. The question wasn't answered that you're not allowed. So this is a very interesting, funny question, right? What happens if wheat kernels come down from the sky, from the clouds? But I think that we can also add to this, to the way we're looking at it in a bit of a different way. The question here might be also connected to the question, what happens if we didn't work hard and it wasn't our process of growing the wheat and working hard and cutting it and harvesting it and bringing it? What if it just came down from the heavens? Okay, and here there is a question. Maybe on the 50th day of the Omer, again, it could be from a totally different quality. This question isn't asked regarding the barley offering in the beginning of the process. It's asked only regarding the end of the process. Okay, so again, we find a very interesting question. Can the end of the process be something that comes down from the heavens? Okay, so I think that's another interesting question. And basically what I think we can tie all the things here together. On the one hand, something much more refined, something that isn't animal food, it's actually human food. It's something that, as we said in the beginning of the process, we're saying we are counting, we are going through a process. We are harvesting, we are working hard. We're so obligated to be working hard that it can even overcome Shabbat. But at the end, we're not supposed to work. At the end, it's a different quality. At the end, it's something much more refined. And at the end, maybe even if it comes down from the heavens without us working, it's good enough to bring. And I think that already can tie us into the idea of Matan Torah. What happens in Matan Torah? Am Yisrael leave Egypt. They go through this process of understanding Hashem in their life, and they, from day to day, go through more and more acknowledgement and maybe more and more mending their ways and purifying themselves, like the Zohar describes, and going through the process, and this process is for them. Usfaltem lachem, and also in Dvarim it says, V'safalta lecha. It is for you. It is totally for us. We are going through a process so that we will be able to receive Torah. But eventually, The 50th day has a totally different quality. The 50th day is already an ex-territory. It's not in our hands anymore. It's something that can come down from the heavens. And regardless of how hard we work, we might be receiving a gift from heaven. Now, there is a tension here, because on the one hand, we are working hard, and we are supposed to be working hard in our fields and bring the offering. But I think what the halacha is trying to teach us is that we also need to be open for things that are beyond ourselves to happen. And when we think about it, the 50th day, really, the idea of 50 doesn't only appear here in the context of Shavuot. We also find it with the Yovel, the Jubilee, right? What do we have there? I'm skipping. I'll go back to this in a minute. No, we don't have it there. I'm going to stop the share for a second. What do we have in the Jubilee, in the Yovel? Everyone needs to go and be set free, right? Even the slaves that were not agreeing to go free and leave their masters, they have to leave on the 50th day. The 50th year, sorry, of the Yovel. The 50th day of the Yovel is basically a year in which everyone, regardless of what they want and how much they worked hard, they need to go back and get their land. No matter how much they messed up, they are in the year of the territory of Hashem, right? So therefore they go back to their own personal land. They're to the things that are connected to them, regardless of how hard they worked and how hard they didn't work. So in that sense, it also connects to what we said about the counting. It's something, we count 49 days, and we learn from the Torah of the Musar and Chassidut and Kabbalah, and there's a lot of different teachings that teach us how we should mend our ways. And whoever was following the O-Marathon, we've been trying to suggest, like according to the language of the Spirot that are printed in the Sidurim, how to work on each and every day to refine the people we are. But really, the big question that comes up when we talk about Shavuot is after we count 49 days, and we try to refine ourselves and to mend our ways and to work hard. But eventually, the big question is: are we capable of being open enough to receive Torah, to receive a gift from Shamayim, to receive something from Hashem that's beyond what we can do? And that's kind of like the meeting point between we climb up the mountain as much as we can, but then B'ezrat Hashem will receive something beyond what we can describe and beyond what we can understand. And I think there's so many teachings about this idea, but I think first of all, just taking the core of this, and as mentioned, the title of this year, like, right? We have the hard work, we have the refining, and we have renewing in the sense that we can hopefully come to a place where we're open enough for something beyond ourselves to happen, for something really new, for Torah that's beyond what we can understand, for Torah that's beyond what we could have imagined, beyond what we could have worked hard on. And that, I think, is parallel to, again, the counting of the Beit Din. The 50th day is the counting of the Beit Din. The Beit Din is something beyond my personal self. It represents all of us as a whole. The counting that we count with the heart, not by saying, not by action. Okay, so that's kind of the parallel there. So as I said, there's a lot of teachings around this, but we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to share, I guess, one or two more ideas that really connect and maybe can strengthen the understanding here regarding this idea. So let's see. I've mentioned a bit of this idea that is brought by Rabbi Tzadok Kahn and Lublin, about the slave coming out in the 50th year, the Jubilee of the Yovel. And a bit of what I've mentioned now is also an idea that's brought by the Baal Shem Tov, that he said that in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, it says that there were 50 gates of Bina, of wisdom, that were given to Moshe, but one of them he didn't get. So I'm explaining quickly, but basically whoever wants to look into it more in the sources can see that on the one hand it says that he was given 50, and on the other hand it says -1. So did he get 50 or did he get -1? So basically what the Baal Shem Tov explained is he got 50, but 50 by definition is 50 minus 1, because the 49 are something that we can actually hold on to. We can actually work on. And the 50th is something that we can never grasp. And therefore, said the Baal Shem Tov, when you reach the 50th gate, you realize there's another 49 to go. And when you reach the 50, you get another 49. You understand you're only in the beginning. There's something infinite about reaching that 50th gate, because it's something beyond reach, it's beyond our grasp. That's the idea of Shavuot. It's a different quality. We build up, we work hard, but then to be open, to be renewed by receiving something beyond ourselves. And I guess the last example, I'll just give to this now. How can I scroll back? Here we go. There's a famous, the famous book of Mesilat Yesharim, when he describes purity. What is the midah of tahara? Purity. So he goes and he explains that purity is the rectification of the heart and the thoughts. And he goes on and he brings a quote, Lev tahor bali Elohim, create in me a pure heart. And he really says that it's a deep purity. He says you can do a lot of good deeds, but your intentions are not there, right? And then he brings an example and he says, just like although such a prohibited motive may be annulled in its minor amount, meaning when you have a small wrong intention, when you do something good, he says, just like, I'm skipping the second line, and just like one cannot offer up a flower offering on the altar in the earthly temple unless it is sifted through 13 sieves, which is specifically something that we know only regarding the Omer. Okay, any other offering, you can see this in the Mishnah and Menachot, any other offering is brought, is sifted 12 times or 11 times, but only the Omer is sifted 13 times. So he really takes this model of the Omer and he says, this is the model of purity, of purifying ourselves. And just like to come with a clean heart, you could have all kinds of things mixed up, but that's not what you bring onto the Mizbeach. That's not how you approach Hashem. Only when you purify yourself as much as possible, and the model for that is the sacrifice, the offering of the Omer. And again, that's the long process of the 49 days. And that's the model of the counting of the Omer specifically. But then at the end of the process, we really can come to the day of Shavuot, which is no longer lachem, right? The Omer, as we said in the beginning, in the second source here, if you look again at the Psukim, and we'll conclude with this, Shiva Shavuot Yispor Lach, I'm reading it in Hebrew, Shiva Shavuot Yispor Lach. 7 weeks you count for yourself. And then, finally, in the second pasuk, V'asita Chag Shavuot LaHashem Elokecha. In the next pasuk. The 7 weeks are for us, but the final last day, the day of Shavuot, is the day of Hashem. And really, I think that's what we need to be preparing for when we think about Shavuot. to come with the understanding that we need to work so hard and to purify ourselves and to sift each and every intention we have within ourselves, and to know that we're coming and working hard, but on the other hand, to understand that on the 50th day, we need to come pure and understand that now it's Hashem's turn, and to be open to receive Torah, to be open to receive something beyond our reach, and Bezrat Hashem will receive those gifts.